think the purpose is for us to get one, not to.
And is it the next day?
Right.
I'm trying to prevent that, just saying.
Cool. I didn't even have a license.
So we are live.
Just kidding.
Ready? Fair housing. Can anybody tell me what fair housing means?
House people fairly.
House what?
House people fairly.
House people.
People fairly.
So fair housing is house people
Yeah.
fairly. Okay, we can go with that. Like, what does it mean to care? Because you care for somebody.
Protection.
Say it loud.
Discriminate.
Oh, can't discriminate. All right. So, this is about discrimination. Yes, certain classes of people are protected. Okay. So if you intend to discriminate, this is the chapter where you're going to learn that there's no refunds. If you want to quit now, you can. And yeah, I expected that from both of you.
I studied too much today for that.
At least you're proving that you're studying. I love that. Is everybody else
Well, I
studying?
still have time.
Well, you studied as well, Al, right?
Yes.
Because you answered the 21, so it's good. You forget it. All right, here's what you need to remember. As a potential licensee, the student of real estate must be aware of illegal and discriminating housing practices in order to avoid them. Look what it says. Failure to comply with fair housing practices is not only ground for license revocation, but is also what? Criminal act. And what does that mean? Potential jail time. Already? Go.
If you go to jail for a criminal act for real estate, and then the 5 years go by, can you start again and get another real estate license?
You know the answer is yes.
First start.
Right?
First start.
All right,
Cool.
Second chances in life.
let's go back to this. You said 5 years later?
Mm-hmm.
The answer is no.
Does this happen?
5 years. So I gotta wait 6?
Louder.
5 years and 1 day.
Katie? 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 Something on the floor. Okay. 5 years and 1 day. And again, it depends on the real estate commission. They have to approve it.
Just go to a different state.
One of the questions, just like your driver license, has your license ever been revoked? No.
No. As far as I know.
Well, really? All right, next. We're going to start with federal laws, and then we're going to go to state laws. All right? So, look what I have highlighted under federal laws. 1866, Civil Rights Act of 1866.
Is that important?
Race and color.
Maybe. It's highlighted in green?
Yeah.
So it is. The reason why I have only 1866 highlighted is because there's no other 1866 in the book, so it's easy to remember.
Oh,
What you need to know is that every time, it is definitely in the state exam, every time they talk about the 1866 law, you need to know that this law prohibits any type of discrimination based on race and color. So every time I say 1866, you say race and color. So let's give it a try. 1866?
Race
Race
and
and
color.
color.
Very good. Race and color?
1966.
1866.
We're going to do great.
No, I remember you.
1866. Cool. Oh, you're still there? Okay. I'll go back to 1960. Right there. You got it?
Yeah, I got it.
All right. Next. Right above Federal Fair Housing Act of 1968, look what it says. I told you in the beginning that every rule has an exception, and I told you there's a few that don't. This is one of them. If it's based on 1866 law, what does it say? No exceptions are allowed to this federal law. No exceptions. So if it's based on race and color, the reason for discrimination, there's no exceptions. And why are we talking about exceptions? Because, bless you, in 1968, all right, 1968, look, the only thing I have highlighted, In 1968, they added the exceptions. They also added more protected classes. So we already had race and color. They now added religion and national origin when selling or leasing residential property.
Yeah, that I know, because when you ask for off day and it has something to do with religion, they cannot deny it.
Really? I want to take a day off and it's based on religion, they can't deny?
They cannot deny
No, yeah, you're staying here, you're working.
it. If I have a letter that says I'm gonna be attending a religion matters, they cannot deny, they cannot take a full payment out of that day. Like, they could take a partial.
Oh, all right, 90% off.
No?
So, anyway, but I want you guys to know that this is federal laws, and these protected classes are on leasing, right? Selling or leasing residential property. That means that if it's commercial property or industrial property, these protections do not exist under federal law. We didn't go to state yet, right? So if it's residential, you cannot discriminate based on race, color, religion, national origin. If it's commercial property, you can discriminate based on anything you want. That's federal law.
So the only difference that separate them is federal and
Oh, we didn't get to state yet. You're gonna see.
state.
This is all federal. We have a good 20 minutes just on federal.
That's
Now.
federal government, right?
Government. Federal Fair Housing Act covers dwellings and apartments, as well as vacant land acquired for the construction of residential buildings, and prohibits the following discriminatory acts. This is common sense, so I just want you to mark the bullet points. But for instance, you cannot refuse to sell or rent or negotiate with any person, or make any changes to contracts or practice discrimination through any statement of advertisement or whatever, just because they're from a different religion, different color, different national origin, or anything like that, right? But they did create exemptions. So the federal government says you can't discriminate. But if you really want to, here's what you can do
Under the law.
under the law. So it's okay to discriminate. By the way, this is the most confusing one, so bear with me. You can discriminate in the sale or rental of a single-family home. And look at the law. When the home is owned by an individual who does not own more than 3 such homes. So the first part of this law is, if you intend to discriminate, you can, as long as it's a single family and you only own 3 single families. That's your quota, that's your max. If you purchase a 4th single family, that's it. No more discrimination for you. That's what the law says. We just read it. Does it make any sense? The fact that there's exemptions to discrimination already does not make sense, right? But this does not at all. Look what it says right after. It says, and a broker, salesperson, or agent is not used because we can never discriminate. And the seller or landlord is not using discriminatory advertising. What does that mean? That we are not blatant on the advertising saying, hey, no green people. Or no people from the religious flower, right? Or flower religion, whatever you want to call it, right? So your advertising cannot be specifically discriminating. If you didn't specifically discriminate, then it's okay to discriminate. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, just like employers.
Just like it is right now. Really.
Anyway,
Think you could
and
just
does that make any sense?
Just stick with this non-discriminating. That's it.
I should have an exception for that.
That's so.
Huh?
I understand about purchasing 3 houses. and
You understand?
enforcement, yeah, but the government wants more. Taxes on their pockets.
This is federal, it's not state
Oh, okay.
or municipal.
Isn't this chapter that you can't discriminate, you can have, like a house and it's just for like a church?
We'll get there.
It's not.
No.
This chapter not.
It is chapter, but we'll get there.
Okay.
2 bullet points left. Now, look at the next part. This is like the funniest ever. If the owner This is, have you ever watched comedy so bad, right, that you still have to laugh?
Mhm.
Like that, it's that horrible
South
that you have, South Park?
No.
I agree.
Some.
But that's what it is. This is so bad that you have to laugh at this. If the owner is not living in the dwelling at the time of the transaction or was not the most recent occupant, only one such sale by an individual is exempt within a 24-month period.
You got me
That means you can only discriminate once every 2 years.
If you didn't live in the property.
Correct. If you lived, it's different. But if you didn't live in the property, once every 2 years.
How do I know I'm not gonna be doing this? It's so complicated.
It's not complicated. Just don't discriminate, period.
Okay, now that's it. It's my.
But my question to you guys is, this law is amazing, but who's going to count the time? Who's going to count the time? Because once every 2 years. Oh yeah, I just discriminated against you. Let me put it on my calendar. 2 years from, oh now we have Google. 2 years from now, remind me, it's okay to discriminate again.
If you get sued, it goes on record, right?
The only way for you to know when the
Thank you
2-year limit comes
for
in
mentioning that.
is if somebody put a complaint. If somebody sues, if nobody complains, if nobody sues, which 99.9% of the people don't. Like how many lawsuits have you heard about discrimination?
Now there's not much.
Never that much.
Before, there maybe.
No, never that much. They exist, but never that much.
They don't wanna go.
Doesn't even make it to the mainstream media.
But you gotta know that they discriminated. It's like when you go
No, you
for
don't.
a job.
No,
they
you
throw
don't.
The resume in the trash.
No, you don't.
Yeah, because it's their word against yours.
No, you don't. Here's the thing. In a little bit, I'm going to show you. As long as you feel discriminated against,
That's it.
that's all you need to do.
Did you feel the discrimination?
Oh, between me and you all the time. And now that you came back, it got even worse. I'm just trying to be like, listen, in the previous chapter, we talked about ethics and the code of ethics and how you have to be cordial to other professionals, right? And to your customers. So I'm following the code of ethics. Otherwise, I would have kicked her out already. Now, the rental of rooms or units is exempted in an owner-occupied 1 to 4 family dwelling. Now, this one's very important. Wait. Don't start writing. Don't start taking notes. It's very important for a reason. Guys, don't write anything. It's very important for a reason. Because in my state exam, right, the first one that I did, and I've done a few along the way, just to refresh and to keep these things updated, right? And also from feedback from the students that go to the exam and actually remember something about it, right? In my state exam, there was a question. Under state law, when can you discriminate? And gave me 4 options. Now, one of the options was this one. The other option is what I'm going to show you later on under the state rules. I got confused because these are very similar and also because you shouldn't discriminate at all. So under state laws, where's the exemption? This is a federal law, so definitely does not apply. But if they asked you, if your question, your version of the same question was under federal law, you need to know that if you own a 1 to 4 family, you're renting other units, you can discriminate as long as you live in that property. 1 to 4 family, owner occupied, you can discriminate against the people that live there. Is that clear so far? I'm going to remind you again when we get to state. Now the next 2, and addressing what you were saying, the next 2, I don't want anybody to be offended about what I'm about to say. Okay, it's just an example, and I use this in every class, right? Which is, dwelling units owned by religious organizations may be restricted to people of the same religion if membership in the organization is not restricted on the basis of race, color, national origin, disability, or familial status. The next one is a private club. A private club that is not open to the public. They restrict the rental or occupancy of lodgings that it owns to its members as long as lodgings are not operated commercially. Now, I read this fast for a reason, because I'm going to use the same example for both. And yes, I'm putting religion and private clubs into the same example. So I'm sorry about that, and you'll understand why. Especially after the example. This right here, anybody come in? Oh, you guys were looking. Huh? Hmm? Somebody's there? All right, so. I don't see anybody.
Is delayed.
Hmm?
Your cameras are delayed.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so what I was saying is, let's pretend that this is 24-hour fitness and this is retro fitness. And yes, I'm now putting religion, private club, and the gym in the same example. My question to you guys is, can retro fitness come work out of here?
Now, if they're not a paying member, no.
Say it louder.
If they're not a paying member, no.
Why does it have to be a paying member? They just have to be a member.
Because
I don't pay downstairs and I'm a member. Paying member. You're discriminating against the non-paying members.
exactly.
As long as they have a membership, that's the key. Paying or not paying, right? As long as they have membership, they can work out over here. You guys got it? It's about membership. It's not about the religion. It's not about the club itself. And it's not about the gym. It's about membership. Can you have membership in more than one? If they allow, and it's up to you. You guys got it?
LA Fitness is all over the world. You can go in any.
You can go to any of them. Yep.
Because you're a member in one.
That's it. That was Ricardo. Inspired.
No, it's, did you open the door? They're ringing downstairs.
Ringing? They're not. No, they're not.
Yeah, but they're hearing the ringing.
Yeah. Train.
Can you go tell them? They're just like,
No. Let them have fun with it, going up and down. All right.
The door is always open.
It's going, so no more. Huh? The door's open, it's just that the train over there,
You go deep,
yeah,
Yeah.
stand clear of the open door,
stand clear.
or the closing doors. All right. Did you guys understand about the membership? We're good? Great. As long as you're a member. So when you look at the question, remember that it's about being a member. Now, these next ones, it says, in 1974, and I cannot highlight just 1974 because there's another one. In 1974, an amendment added gender. I know it says sex, I want you guys to write gender. Added gender as a protected class. Okay? In 1988, 2 new classes were added. Those with mental or physical disabilities, including AIDS, and familial status. That means family members under 18 years of age. You've heard of people advertising no children, right? No
Yeah.
children allowed? That's what this is. Families with children are protected. They're still allowed to rent anywhere they want,
unless.
with a few exceptions. We're getting there.
So you can put in your listing, no children allowed?
No.
You can't.
I don't get that part.
I'm going to explain right now. Let's deal with alcoholics first. Okay? So, although alcoholics and persons in treatment are considered a protected class, drug abusers are not, nor are those who pose a threat to the health and safety of others. What does that mean? If I do a background check, you have a criminal record, I don't need to investigate what kind of record that is. It could have been a mistake, it could have been something minor. The fact that it came up with a criminal record, that's it. I can now say no to you. It's
You
okay.
rent the house.
So,
Or even to
drug
sell.
abusers or people with bad record or any record, you can discriminate.
To sell or to also to
Federal law is leasing or selling residential.
Oh, leasing and selling.
But here we're saying everything for the where you're allowed to discriminate. Next. Do you guys remember we just talked about members under 18 years of age? So families with children? Yes? Great. So since you remember that, let's look at this. Housing intended for older persons. is exempt from familiar status. What does that mean? If it's senior housing, it's okay to say no to children. That makes sense, right? It's intended for seniors. So the members of that community are seniors. So again, it's based on membership. The people that come live here intend to be part of this private senior club.
Oh, that's why I heard of like, one of my step grandmothers, she almost got kicked out of her
Did you say
apartment.
step grandmother?
Yeah,
That's so awesome.
I know,
Love it.
right? She almost got kicked out of her apartment here in New Jersey because she had her 2 daughters and her daughter's grandkids with her when it was a senior home, right?
So I'm going to show you that if it's a 55 plus, if the community does not say no, then there's not a problem.
But
All right. So let me break this down into 2 separate sections for senior housing, and then I'll address that because that is a perfect example actually. So you guys notice that I highlight the whole thing except or, because I want to make this distinction that there's 2 types of senior housing. There's strictly seniors, which is called 62 or older. I want to make sure you guys underline it. Solely occupied by persons 62 or older. Okay,
There's 55 and 60.
I'm getting there. Where it says solely occupied by 62 or older means that the youngest person in this community must be 62. So let me do a quick example. Let's say I'm married and my wife is younger than me, right? So let's say that I've reached the age of 62 and she's at the age of 55. Can we live in this community?
Yeah,
No. I have to wait until she reaches the age of 62. In the strictly seniors, so 62 or older, strictly seniors, the youngest person must be 62 or older. Now, there's another group of people.
yeah, I heard of it.
Me too. We're getting there. I heard it too.
I
Look what it
tried to
said.
help her, but I was like, I can't.
I can help her
I don't like, oh, she doesn't, she went back to Puerto Rico.
because you're going to find.
No, she doesn't
Okay.
like the cold anyway.
I don't either. I don't blame her.
Yeah,
Plus, Puerto Rico.
yes, exactly.
Anyway.
Right there. Amazing.
So right here, if 80% of the units are occupied by at least one person 55 or older, at least one person 55 or older, and the housing facility or community publishes and adheres to policies and procedures that demonstrate this intent to be housing for older persons. So what are we saying here? We're saying that there's 2 types of housing, 62 or older only, and the 55 plus. In the 55 plus, which is the most common that people see,
Yeah.
right? There's more 62 or older than 55, but what we see advertised, what became really common nowadays, is 55 plus. In these communities, only one person in the household must be 55 or older. You guys got it? So if I reach the age of 55 and my wife is 47, can we move in to this 55 plus?
Yeah.
We can. In the other one, no. In this one, yes. What if we have children?
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Yeah,
Now depends.
In the community.
Now depends on the policies. As long as it complies with occupancy rules issued by the Housing and Urban Development, they are okay.
Or in the community as well.
But within the community,
Or within-
they have to have their policies and cannot go against Housing and Urban Development. So some of these 55 plus have rules where one person must be 55, and children under 18 can only visit the grandparents 6 months at a time, or 2 days, or 2 weeks, or the whole year is okay. But that's up to the community to decide. Do you understand? So one person must be 55. Children might be allowed to be there as long as it demonstrates intent to be housing for older person and complies with occupancy rules issued by Housing and Urban Development.
That's why she
You guys
lost
got
her, because she had her granddaughter.
It depends on the
And
policies.
her daughter and her kids. Yeah.
It depends. If that particular community said no children, it's okay for them. They can say it. If it was not a senior community, then they could not say it. All right. Jones versus Mayer. Has anybody ever heard of Jones versus Mayer? Yes? Who can tell me about it?
No one.
Anybody? Without reading, of course. Without reading, everybody has their face in the book. All right.
It's right there.
Is it?
The only thing I know, Jones sued Mayor, and then they went to court, and.
That's usually what a lawsuit happens.
Yes. Well, that's, that's why I like it, because it's Sue. By the way, my name is Sue, okay, not Yasmin. I like to sue people.
And that's why I keep her in the corner.
Yes.
All right.
Oh, not the right, never got fired.
I'm always asking, can I sue?
Mm-hmm.
That's why you never fired her.
Oh, no, I already fired her. She just
No, you're fired.
doesn't go away.
Right back in.
Because she will sue.
Okay.
Because she will sue. All right, moving forward. So Jones versus Mayer. See, in 1968, we had the Federal Fair Housing Practice, right, where they added some exemptions, right? Jones versus Mayer came to say, no, there cannot be an exemption to a particular rule. See, this is what happened. Jones, an African American, sued Alfred H. Company because they refused to sell him a house in St. Louis County, Missouri, solely on the basis of race. In its ruling, the court upheld the Civil Rights Act of 1866, which prohibits all racial discrimination, private or public, in the sale and rental of property. The importance of this decision, the Jones versus Mayer, rests in the fact that while 1968 federal law exempts individual homeowners and certain groups, as we just went over, right? The 1866 law prohibits all racial discrimination without exception. So, highlighted, despite any exemptions in the 1968 law, an aggrieved person may seek remedy for racial discrimination under the 1866 law against any homeowner, regardless of whether the owner employed a real estate broker and or advertised the property. Look what I have in green. Where race is involved, no exceptions apply. Where race is involved, no exceptions apply.
So it says, an aggrieved person may seek remedy. How does that apply?
So we're going to go into enforcing it, but if you feel like you were discriminated and it was based on your race or your color, you have something you can go after. So what we're trying to say here is that 1968 law says as long as you don't use discriminatory advertising, as long as you have a single house, a single family house and not more than 3, right? All that stuff were exemptions. Jones versus Mayer came to say, wait a minute, the first law was in 1866 and 102 years later, we're canceling that law already? Like it took us, right? From the New World, it took us 1,866 years to come up with this rule. And 100 years later, we change it? No. So that's why the judge said there are exemptions under the 1960 law, but the basis of all this discrimination protection is race and color. So that you cannot discriminate at all. Yes?
Just something to go back up. Say, for instance, you have an apartment and it's a second floor, and you don't want to put kids on the second floor. How would you advertise that?
You don't? Do you live there?
I don't know.
No, I'm asking. If it's owner occupied, it's a different story. There might be a chance, but this is federal law. We still didn't get the state.
Okay. So you can't. So I mean, you're pretty much just gonna look at the application and be like, oh, nope, no kids. But you can't say it. Is what you're saying. Like you can look at them. Oh, they have kids. No, they have
Don't
kids.
look at
No.
the kids too hard. Because that might be a problem.
I mean, but I'm just trying to understand. Like, how do you?
Let me
Because,
get,
I mean, if you rent an apartment upstairs with kids, and then the person downstairs is gonna be complaining all the time, the kids are running around. So what do you?
gotcha.
So how are you supposed to remedy that problem legally?
Let me get to the state part. When we get there, I'll address that.
All right.
Is that a deal?
Sure.
Cool. This is how you handle objections. Push them forward.
Not my monkey.
No, no. In this case, it's my monkey because I have to explain that. Nobody told me to be an instructor.
Yeah, he used that word now.
Yeah. All right. Has anybody said that to anybody today? Not my monkey.
Yeah, I did.
You did?
Yeah.
To who?
To my head. Not my monkey. No, I'm just kidding. I showed the video actually. It's the coworker.
No, but I have people that after that class start saying that to others. Not my monkey. Keep moving.
Oh, that's why he used to tell me that then.
You used to? Okay.
But she didn't understand, I keep quiet. That's how I have to do.
Just doesn't to today. Now I understand why.
See, I was enjoying till. up to
Yeah,
now.
he was really enjoying.
Sorry. I did it.
No,
All right.
And that was starting to piss me off. I'm like, say that one more time. I'm trying to see what's gonna happen.
Equal housing poster. This is the poster right here. Check this out. There's a poster. This is the federal poster, and there's a state poster. What are the things that, or what stands out the most right here?
The house.
The house with the equal sign, or
The middle part.
the middle part?
Yeah.
Where's the
Illegal
middle? Because the middle right here was
It's
this.
illegal to
The illegal discrimination.
discriminate against
Okay.
a person. That's what stands out the most.
So it's all about us being equal. It's illegal to discriminate. That's why you have a house with an equal sign. Fair housing opportunity.
You only read it's illegal to discriminate. That's
Good.
it. And then
Stay
you already
there.
know.
Stay there. It's illegal to discriminate.
That's why America's number one.
So when you
Discriminator?
walk to the door,
So,
Not discriminate. That's why a lot of people come from another country and because over here everything's supposedly like,
oh
yeah,
yeah,
it's okay.
advertising is great. So right above blockbusting and steering, here's what you're gonna write, highlight. When HUD investigates a broker for discriminatory practices, it considers failure to display the poster evidence of discrimination. Right, evidence of discrimination. So it's pretty much this. You guys probably did not notice right away, but we do have it in the reception area, which serves both the school and the real estate. The posters are there, both the federal and the state. But if it wasn't there, and somebody here felt like they were discriminated against, which I discriminate every day, just so you guys know, especially against people with cousins. What happens is, when somebody investigates and comes in and sees that the poster is missing, it's like a checklist. The first thing, poster supposed to be here is not, they definitely discriminate. Next, and they go check your files. They go check how you handle people. Does that make sense? But the poster is the first step. It's not like having a poster is going to make it any better, but if you do get investigated, it's like evidence that you don't have any policy in the office.
It's gonna help you for them not to like
Correct.
give a reason for a checklist.
Absolutely. And under state laws, you actually get fines.
Anything to take money out of them.
Hmm?
Anything to take money out of them.
Oh, in this case, it's not about the money. It's about don't discriminate.
And also the
All right, blockbusting and steering, and yes, also money. That's the traffic tickets. Blockbusting and steering. Here you go. Blockbusting.
What does that mean? Never.
About to explain.
I thought
Does
it was
anybody know?
Blockbuster.
Does anybody know what Blockbuster was?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't exist anymore. What was it? A video store,
Oh, okay.
Right?
Got it right.
somewhat. I'm going to use Blockbuster as an example. What was the main thing about Blockbuster? Yeah, not your time. Sorry? What kind of movies?
I don't know, I was too young.
Any kind of movie.
DVDs.
It was
No, that's the
DVDs.
Chinese lady. CD,
They
DVD.
did have like
No,
sections.
DVDs,
They did have sections
VHS.
divided.
They have VHS, but they have DVDs, and they stopped right after Blu-ray. Sorry?
And they had sections divided.
They had sections divided. But what was the good thing about Blockbuster that you cannot get in another video store? They had the latest and greatest. What does that mean? It's like Black Friday for the movies that just came out of the theaters. Everybody was rushing there.
I don't remember that.
So the reason why it's called Blockbuster, listen,
I am too, but I don't remember.
so the reason why it's called Blockbuster is because they created what's called panic peddling. It's scaring you that if you don't get here quick enough, this is for Blockbuster, if you don't get here quick enough, just like Black Friday, you're going to lose out, right? You're not going to have the video, the movie that you want to watch that just came out of the
Yeah.
theaters. Does that make sense? So that was it. That was the craze. You got there, and there's nothing. Like all the other movies are there.
They only had the little play out display. And
Just a
no
display.
DVD.
Yeah.
No DVD.
But that's-
How is Redbox any different from Blockbuster?
Hmm?
How is Redbox any different? Did you say what's Redbox?
What is it?
Wow.
Wow.
Double wow.
Walmart. Go to Walmart and see.
Yeah, it's a Stop and Shop, Walmart, like this, a
Everywhere.
box, where you can get the
okay,
DVDs from, yeah. But you've seen it before.
I have.
You
Yeah.
It's the portable version of Blockbuster.
I'm surprised some people use it.
Yes, some people still use it, but it's not going to be out for much longer. But some people still use it. Most people now use streaming services, right? Which that's what happened with Netflix. They took over Blockbuster, but not before Blockbuster bought stock in Netflix. Smart.
So how does this have
Those
to
are
do
stores.
with the?
I'm getting there. I'm building up a story.
Sorry.
Anyway, what was the point of Blockbuster? Again, because blockbusting, the word blockbusting is you're scaring people into doing something. In this case, thank you for pushing me. In this case, it says, you induce homeowners to sell by making representations regarding the entry or prospective entry of minority persons into the neighborhood. So I'm scaring the homeowner, knocking on their door and say, hey, this group of people, what'd you say?
Yellow people are coming.
The what?
Yellow people are coming,
Yellow?
yes.
You just went to mess with the yellow people.
No, but that's what you do. You knock on doors and say, yellow people are coming.
It's not the Asians' fault.
I didn't say Asian or yellow either.
Whoa.
Why didn't you say green?
I picked the
Is
color.
there a class of yellow people?
Yeah, Asians.
Oh, I didn't know
Yeah,
Exactly.
they are the yellow.
that. We gotta
Back
figure
in
out
the
color.
days, the original races were the yellows and the blacks. And then for some reason we showed up. But
I'm glad I know. I mean, I didn't really, I
I
really
never
didn't know
even
yellow
noticed
was,
that. No.
I was hidden somewhere in the Ice Age, but
brown, white.
that's what it was.
I didn't know
Exactly.
yellow was what.
No, if you guys,
Is there any others?
there's plenty.
Well, I know black, brown,
There's the multicolor.
Yellow.
There's the transparents like me.
blues,
Donald Trump.
greens.
Orange. This is live, so careful with certain
I'm sorry.
statements.
Okay.
FBI. All right. So here's the thing. Unfortunately, we're all classified, right? And especially when you go apply for loans, that's another thing they do. Once you fill out, since you brought that up, once you fill out that optional, right, census where they ask, what's your race, right? Once you fill out that, they will use it to categorize you, and they will use to figure out what kind of loan to give you, which is illegal. I'm going to show you in a second. You guys got it? So this happens a lot still today. Actually, easier today because the census is more and more up to date. Okay, so you talked about yellow people, they're coming into the neighborhood. So if Asians are moving in, we're gonna scare you, right? We're gonna scare you into saying, sell now. Because Asians know Kung Fu, they're crazy. They're gonna destroy your property. You've seen what they do with those wood blocks? Imagine what's gonna happen to your house. Obviously, I'm joking, but what they do is actually pick on the worst things from a particular culture. Okay? So not too long ago, Newark was mainly Italian or Polish.
Yeah.
They're out.
Yeah.
Portuguese, and then eventually Brazilian came along.
No, it's bad.
And now they're getting out. Now Hispanic community is coming in. Right? Eventually they're gonna get kicked out. It keeps on having this cycle in different communities. Now, it's very important you understand this, because guess what the Portuguese and the Brazilians are doing to their own people? Sell now, because the Hispanics are coming. Right? And they come up with the craziest stuff. That's how it is. The Italians did that when the Portuguese were getting here. Are you guys understanding this?
Mhm.
We scare you because certain groups of people are coming in. Now, the Federal Fair Housing Practice prohibits, Federal Fair Housing Act prohibits this practice. You cannot use scare tactics to get your sale done,
Like the one you just said right now.
like what I just said. Okay, and it's
But
in
what if
yellow.
I don't say it, but I just kind of make a joke about it? No.
See, I can make jokes because I give the disclosure. I don't think you can do it when you're out there.
Okay.
Okay? And I do the jokes to make this a little bit more lighter versus the morbid subject that it is, that people still discriminate in today's day and age, which is ridiculous. Anyway, steering is the next one. Who has a car? Great. If you have a car, when you sit down right in front of you, when you sit down in the driver's seat, right in front of you, there's a circle thing where you put your hands. What is that called? Steering wheel.
I thought you usually eat.
Sometimes. That's when I'm drinking coffee and eating at the same time and talking on the phone. Now,
And get the ticket.
and what?
Get the ticket.
And get a ticket? No, never. So steering. The steering wheel is supposed to do what? Help you guide the car to where you want to go. To and away from a particular area. Steering in real estate is where I'll look at you and sometimes either in my subconscious mind or sometimes on purpose, I'll steer you away from a particular area or to a particular area. It's not what you wanted, but that's where I got you. Okay, so it says right here, steering is often difficult to detect because the steering tactics can be so subtle that the home seeker was unaware that his options or choices have been limited. So you tell me where you want to live, right? And you tell me you want to live, I don't know,
Freehold.
Freehold. What community do we have in Freehold?
She could have did Newark.
You should have done Newark, right? Oh yeah, well, let's do that. You want to live in Freehold? Yeah? Great. But I'm going to bring you to Ironbound. Why? Because there's no Brazilians in Freehold. There's no Portuguese in Freehold. They're all here. My assumption, See, I know why you want to get away from us. But as a realtor, my mind is you're going to fit better in this
You'll be right at home.
right at home. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's the illegal part. Sometimes that's steering, but sometimes we do it on purpose, sometimes we don't. It's difficult to detect. Okay?
Or how do you know like a person wants to stay around the community or not? Like
Yeah, you
it
ask
could be other
questions.
cases too.
You
It
ask
could be other
questions.
cases, not just because of their
Ask-
nationality, also because it depends what the.
Yeah, but that's why you ask questions. As long as it's not based on race, color, religion, national origin, or anything like that, it's okay.
Now, what about the client steers themselves?
That's your problem, not mine. Not mine.
Well, it is your monkey when they come to you and say, hey, find me a community where it's all Hispanic.
Okay. Now it is your monkey to say the right thing, which is I cannot give you that kind of advice. I'll find homes that meet your specifications. You said 2 family, 3 bedroom, 2 bath in each unit with a garage.
For Hispanic people.
Absolutely. Not in the Hispanic community, but if you want near school, you want near transportation, supermarket, could you please tell me?
Yeah.
I'll help you with that.
You can say everything else but be racist when it comes.
Saying which community doesn't mean I'm racist.
Or like saying what nationality you want to be around to, like Spanish.
Yeah.
Okay. You gotta be very like
Listen, I know
your words.
great Portuguese restaurants, Brazilian restaurants, Dominican restaurants, Puerto Rican restaurants, Indian restaurants,
Oh, they're all over.
Chinese restaurants, they're all over anyway, so it doesn't matter. But tell me, if you want to tell me about communities, I'll find something that addresses what are you looking for, but not the community itself. You guys got it? Because that will be discrimination.
Okay.
You cannot say the Ironbound is Portuguese. Yes, we have Portugal Avenue, which is Ferry Street,
Yeah.
right?
I even painted it.
No, got it. Then we have Brazil Square, little tiny thing there, right?
Excuse me?
Yeah, it's
Where is
tiny.
that? I thought it was Little Brazil.
It's
New
Little
York.
Brazil.
Oh, I'm sorry, Little Brazil
New
Square,
York.
Little.
Which is
It's a
like
joke.
the-
Listen, what I'm trying to say is even though it says that,
But you still can't
doesn't
say-
mean that it's Portuguese, doesn't mean that it's Brazilian, because if you look at all the businesses that are there and all the people that live here, it's a mix. Predominantly, yes. But doesn't mean it's that community. If you say this is the Portuguese community, you're discriminating against everybody else.
No.
And those other people can sue you.
If they hear it.
We're gonna go later on into advertisement guidelines, okay? So we're gonna get into all this stuff. Next, redlining. In front of redlining, in front of redlining, you're gonna write refusing loans or insurance. Refusing loans or insurance. Loans or insurance. Okay? And what it is I'm gonna look at you based on where you live and not based on your qualifications. You're totally approved for a loan or totally approved for the insurance. You live in Newark? No. You're not getting this loan, you're not getting this insurance. Does that make sense? That is absolutely illegal. It's called redlining. So you have blockbusting, you have steering, and redlining are the three fair rules that you cannot break.
So blockbusting is like scaring people away, in other words,
Hmm?
without letting them know.
I'm sorry?
Blockbusting is kind of like
Scaring people to sell.
Scaring people.
Steering is taking them to a particular area or away, and redlining is refusing to issue loans or insurance.
So like red light.
Did you say red light?
Yeah, that's a good acronym.
Red light?
So red, stop. No, red line.
Oh, okay. I thought we were in
That's
Amsterdam.
where she was going with it.
Gotcha. Red light. Sure. Stop.
Right.
Whatever works. I didn't understand that. This is not baseball. All right, you were saying something? Okay, great. So next.
So, is it redlining when they make it premium higher because you live in that area?
See, increasing the premiums is based on risk. If it's a high risk area, I'm entitled to charge you more because I know there's a high chance that you will get into an accident. So that's what they do. They charge you more, and that's why you refuse the insurance versus them refusing you, right? Now, enforcement. Enforcement, the person who believes, remember I said you have to believe? The person who believes that illegal discrimination has occurred has up to 1 year after the alleged act to file a charge with the Department of Housing and Urban Development, or 2 years to bring a federal suit. Okay? This is federal. We still didn't talk about state. Now, if no one requests a court procedure, right on top, the charge will be heard by administrative law judge within HUD itself. And the administrative judge has the authority to issue an injunction. An injunction is an order for somebody to do or stop doing something. Okay?
Why can't they just round it up?
They used to be round and then they applied like inflation type of thing. And these are the numbers that came out. So in addition, penalties can be imposed ranging from $19,787 for first violation of the act to $49,467 for second violation within 5 years, or up to $98,935 for further violations within 7 years. So a couple of houses a year cover your discrimination. It's good. Now, if the case is heard in federal court, an injunction and actual and punitive damages are possible with no dollar limits. So aside from the penalties, aside from the actual damages, the judge can say, here's a punishment, pay $4 million, because that's how they felt like. Or $200, because that's how they felt like, right? On top of everything else, they attribute punitive damages. In addition to the offended parties, the Department of Justice may self-sue anyone who seems to show a pattern of illegal discrimination. So on top of all that, the Department of Justice will also come after you.
You still can lose your license in the first violation. You don't go.
It depends on what it is, yes.
I thought the loan sounded.
Again, not loud proof. Until now, it's been great. I'm going to kick him out right now. Don't worry. In all such cases mentioned, the guilty party may be required to pay the other side's legal fees and court costs, which can add up to substantial amounts. Something you need to remember is that complaints brought under the Civil Rights Act of 1866, that means based on race and color, they must be taken directly to federal court, not court, federal court. If it's race or color, straight to federal court. That's how important this is. And the only time
They're gonna
limit,
follow the test, this is
oh yeah,
complicated.
it falls on the test. The only time limit for action will be the state statutes of limitation for torts, which are injuries done by one person to another. And look what it says next. There will be no dollar limit. It doesn't stop raining, right? When it rains, it pours. No dollar limit. That's what it is. All right. Final thing under federal is threats or acts of violence. So unlawful actions involving threats, coercion, and intimidation are punishable by appropriate civil action. In such cases, the victim should report the incident immediately to the local police and to the nearest office of the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
And that one is easy.
That one was easy, right?
Yeah.
You guys good so far? You guys still alive? Mm-mm. All right, I'm just gonna kick him out real quick. Give me 2 minutes. Go for coffee, go for water, jump up and down, wake up, because we're going to Jersey after.
That's the only.
Yep, it is.
You gotta wake up.
Some jump jacks or something. See, like, I don't know what made you think these classes might work. I did the day class before and it was just, go here, then go to work after. Oh, crazy.
What you working on, like middle of the day?
No, I worked all day, I just took every morning off.
Oh,
Yeah. It's two jobs.
But we're gonna switch out this thing?
3, 4, 5.
Listen. I'm sitting here looking at this chat, I'm like, oh shit, I need to go put this down. Most of I have copies on it, oh shit.
You'll find the three. You just hear, you come back to this, we're gonna get all this stuff.
What you mean? Yeah. Yeah, you gotta do 75 hours, cause you know, once you start practicing, you got all the things you legally supposed to be doing, right? So you got to do 75, and then you got more to do, that's why it's a 450. 75 plus, 75 is the work, management, and all that good stuff, right? But then, no, you said 225, right? The first 75, that's it. But that's why.
All over again.
Yes, but that's what like,
Yeah, I think, you know what create means again? Create. The definition, I kind of know and I just don't know how to explain it. Experiences that you're like, what? Yeah, I know. I know it makes sense, no matter how to report to the different.
well, depending on what did you focus on.
Hold on, I have it here.
Yeah, I just wrote it down the other thing.
It's they.
No, I know, but
You know,
yeah.
using it.
Now, and everything comes back to you.
Yeah, like, cancer?
Not wrong.
So it's religion, it's,
Criança?
religion, creencia. There you go, sorry. Creencia.
Criança.
What do you believe in? So it's religion.
Oh,
Frank had the first one, so fair.
New word I learned.
That's why I got stuck to explaining Portuguese.
I know, because my friend was it's like
All right.
Exactly.
Now we got 2 people watching. All right, we're missing a few people. I said 2 minutes. Al, are you okay? So serious today. Who were missing? Let me see if I can grab him back in. He's there.
Because when you think about it. You see that part? Now we can say,
Worst time in
around, I'll sweep the floor, nobody else out there, so we're good. New Jersey, Ms. Cocaine, Jersey.
Wait.
Oh, not in this class, that's in the morning.
Exactly. Come on, man.
Too late for that? That's how she's known in the
See, they
morning.
got everybody turn around looking at me like, where that name come from?
Listen, I have my night Lewis. It's Cocaine. Don't worry, everybody's gonna have a nickname by the end of this.
Like Lewis. I'm
Yeah,
better.
we have Sue. Don't worry, you look better than Lewis.
Oh, okay.
I'll tell him
I'm
that in the
telling
morning.
Lewis.
Huh?
I'm telling
I
Lewis.
just said I'll tell him that in the morning. I'm not afraid.
Hope he's home watching
every
this.
day.
That'd be funny if he's home watching this.
Ah, that's fine. Just have fun. Jersey. All right, real quick, Jersey. It is important to note right here, while federal laws apply to residential housing, so I told you that, federal was leasing or renting of residential property. New Jersey law applies to all real property. All real property. That means you cannot discriminate whether it's residential, commercial, institutional, right? What are the other ones? Does anybody know? Residential, commercial, institutional,
Does land count?
land?
Purchasing land?
It depends. Where do you want to put it? Is it under recreational? You want to put it under residential? You want to put it under commercial? What kind of land is it? So there's 5 different types of zonings. There's 5 different types of zonings. We'll talk about that later in a different chapter. But it's residential, commercial, industrial, institutional, and recreational. Land could be in any of these. Depends on the purpose for that land. Got it? That was a good point. Could be land. So you cannot discriminate in the sale of anything in Jersey. That's what we're saying. All right, so Travis was getting excited, like, oh, exceptions. Like Bruno didn't give me exceptions on chapter 1 and 2 about giving money to unlicensed people. But here, we can reject some people. So let's look at this. We're going to go over protected classes on the next page. There's a table at the bottom. You see table 4.1? Yes? Great. Here's what I want you guys to do. In that table, around that table, you're going to put a box. Highlight around it. Because that is your cheat sheet for discrimination. Meaning for you to know whether you can or cannot discriminate. Why do I call it a cheat sheet? Because look at this. Everything we went over. Civil Rights Act of 1866. What do we have? What about 1968? Great. So as you can tell, the bullet points tell you exactly what's covered when and where. So let's go to New Jersey all the way at the bottom. What does it cover?
Except age.
Everything except age. But because age is covered by the Equal Credit Opportunity Act of 1974, state law cannot go against federal law. So that means age is still covered. You guys got it? Yes?
Yeah.
Great. So federal might be liberal and say, yeah, you might be able to discriminate. Jersey says, nope. Not discriminating at all. You guys got it? At all. Right?
But if the federal says it's okay, the state can't go against federal, you said, right?
State cannot go against federal, no. In terms of enforcement. So what happens is, we have, for instance, the Constitution. That's a supreme law of the land. Those are the original suggestions. The law, the federal law and state law cannot go against it, but it can complement it. It could be an add-on. So think about when you go to, let's say, a stupid comparison, but it helps. You go get a burger next door at McDonald's. What's the first thing they ask you? Would you like fries and Coke with that? Or fries and a drink with that, right? You're adding on to the meal. Okay, they're not saying you cannot have the burger, have the fries. They're asking for add-on. You got it? So supreme law, federal law, state law, counties, municipal, and so on. Got it? So Jersey says no discriminating at all. Yes?
Yes.
Except for rentals. Except for rentals. I'm sorry, I have to do this.
I don't have eyeliner today, but you know they are.
I'm here talking and I see that I'm not perfect. I'm like, oh, great. I'm not saying, what I'm saying is great, because most people say I'm the best, I'm perfect, right?
No.
I'm not perfect, and then all of a sudden my eyeliner is.
I don't have eyeliner today, but usually I make
No, I'm talking about that.
I know.
Like
I
you're
know.
excusing yourself? No.
I'm
it's
not
cute.
perfect, yeah.
All right. Bless you. You're allergic to eyeliners? No? Okay, good. So, the only exception to New Jersey law applies to rentals. It allows rooms, apartments, or flats in certain types of housing to be restricted to members of one sex. Religious-based organizations to discriminate on the basis of religion. We already covered this. It's very similar to federal, right? You guys remember when I talked about the one question in state exam that asked under state law, when can you discriminate? And there was two options. It was the 1 to 4 family, owner-occupant, right? The second option was owner-occupant to discriminate except for race in the rental of a duplex or up and down 2-family dwelling. So if the question was under state law, then this would be the exemption. If the
Under
question
state
was
law?
under federal law, yeah, this is state. If the question was under the federal law, then 1 to 4 family. Does that make sense? Questions?
The federal law was only talking about residential properties. It wasn't talking about rooms, apartments.
We actually did-
So it does mention it somewhere, but here it's like add-on, it's stronger. So if you go back to the cheat sheet, that table, it has way more restrictions than federal. But in the 4 options I had in that question, 2 completely unrelated, and 2 very similar. One said 1 to 4 family, and the other one said the duplex or up and down 2 family. If it's under state law, it's this one. If it's under federal law, it's the 1 to 4 family. And again, it says, as we were just mentioning, note that these exemptions are similar to those available under federal law. They're not the same, they're similar, right? Now, New Jersey law does not contain the federal exceptions for homeowners selling their own homes, and no exceptions apply when a broker is involved. Look what it says again, now under state law. There's never an exception for race, whether or not a broker is involved. Didn't we cover this in federal law? It's based on which law? No, but which one is it? 1866. Not 1966, okay? 1866 law. So make sure you put a note there. It's a federal law, state cannot go against it, but it can enforce it. And that's what it's doing here.
Can you enforce it like add on? The words?
Exactly.
So as far as back to the question I asked about the
Kids.
renting upstairs. So you're saying legally I could say no? Because I'm just trying to understand, how do you legally advertise that? If I'm an owner occupant?
Coming up.
Okay. I thought this is what you were talking about.
No, I got you.
Sorry.
Am I known for forgetting things?
Yes.
Listen. Not in the class. Okay.
With the book we memorized it.
That's why I'm telling you, when you ask a question, I know it's coming. All right, cool. So, block busting and record keeping. We already talked about block busting under federal law. But now under state law, they're asking you to keep certain records because the real estate commission can investigate you, right? Can investigate you, and they want to know that you are not practicing block busting. So the commission requires that any brokerage soliciting listings from more than 3 homeowners in a block during a single month, whether by mail, telephone, or door-to-door canvassing, to keep permanent records of the activity for at least a year. Well, as it says, the record should include the people they went knock on doors or sent mailers to. The idea is not to protect you from blockbusting, but it is to protect you from the investigation and prove that you don't practice blockbusting. So if you send mailers to everybody on the block, no problem. If you skipped a few and somebody felt, wait a minute, why did they not advertise to me, right? They can now put a complaint with the real estate commission. They'll come down and see your records and they'll ask you, hey, on door number 33, 35, and 37, why did you not advertise to these people? And if it's based on their race, color, religion, national origin, or so on, then you are practicing blockbusting. You got it? So the idea is just
Make sure you send
keep
it.
tight records so you can prove that you don't discriminate. Okay? If you do discriminate, just clean up after yourself. Tiffany, joke. She's like, yeah. She's like, yeah, clean up, I got this.
I'm not until, so it's okay.
Like we know how to do it. All right. Poster. Did I tell you there was a federal and the state poster?
Yes.
I did. In fact, I also told you that if you don't have the poster, is evidence of discrimination. Under the state poster rules, if you don't have one, you're punishable by a fine of $100 or more. And you're probably thinking $100?
What poster?
Who cares? Huh?
What poster?
Does it say that? Oh, okay.
What poster?
What poster? The state poster. You remember the one with the house? With the equal sign?
And it's always outside, like.
No. Okay, hold on.
Which one?
Right here. This is the state poster. Children.
Sorry.
Okay. So,
It was about the poster though. Yeah, it was about the poster.
so there's a federal poster you guys saw before with the little house and the equal
Okay.
sign, and this is the state poster. If you guys want to see it firsthand, you can go after the class or after the break. You can go over there to the reception area, and the posters are right there, okay, hidden somewhere.
To the left.
Okay, enforcement. Now, when we're talking about enforcement here, we're talking about state enforcement. You've dealt with federal already. Now we're under state, correct? If there's a complaint brought under New Jersey law against discrimination, it must be filed with the state attorney general within 180 days after the alleged offense. Under federal law, how many days do you have? 1 year to file a complaint with HUD, or 2 years for federal lawsuit. Very good. These are statutes of limitations. Beyond that time, can you file complaints? No.
1
Very-
year? No, it says here 2 years to bring a federal suit.
So right before that, it says 1 year for complaints, 2 years for federal lawsuit. Okay? They have 45 days to attempt conciliation, and once they order, once New Jersey Supreme Court files an order, the director may award reimbursement for medical expenses, awards for pain, suffering, and humiliation. In case you guys do not know what that means, it means thousands and thousands of dollars in medical expenses, because the psychiatric, right, is not cheap. We're not talking about psychologists, we're talking about going with the heavy guns. And they prescribe, right? Why are you smiling and saying that?
It's a lot of money.
Against you.
Yeah?
On top of that, $10,000 for a first offense, $25,000 for a second offense, and up to $50,000 for subsequent offenses. My question to you guys is,
Would this
Who's broke by
supervision
now?
offense More than 2 offenses?
yeah,
The broker.
your broker, you get sued, then your broker gets sued. My question is, are you already broke before you start discriminating? So, not bad, right? I'm telling you, sell a few extra houses, and you're okay to discriminate anytime. On top, notice of listing. right on top, notice the listing says a copy of the Attorney General Memorandum of Discrimination must be given to the homeowner at the time that the property is listed. Right above that, I want you to write page 57 and page 58. So notice that listing, write page 57, page 58. Page 57, page 58. I love how people think they can bribe me. I have a student, about to be a student. Do I get any additional discount if I bring you cheesecake?
What kind? Sure.
Should I be sweet cheesecake?
I don't
What
know.
about if I bring you a Rhodesian?
Ooh, it's free for you.
Oh, yeah? I'll make sure it happens tomorrow.
Groupon, I know.
Didn't you already pay?
You gotta bring food
I can
for
get the big
everybody.
one,
Gotta
the
bring
money
for
back.
everybody.
On referral.
All right.
You get a point.
Gotta
Bring it for
everybody.
yourself, you gotta bring it for everybody.
Just for him, that would be his
No,
problem.
no,
His problem, not
this is
mine.
not the room, this class. Mm-mm.
All right. Look at the bottom what it says. It says salespersons and brokers must refuse listings from owners who indicate they intend to violate the law against discrimination.
But it's a $5 million house though. Do I really need to worry about what they about to do?
Yeah. Because that's a $5 million lawsuit or more.
Ooh, depending on the price of the house.
Oh, yeah.
How much?
Different standards.
Just don't ask me more questions.
All right. So, she said if it's a $5 million house, should we really be concerned about the discrimination? Yeah.
Depending on the price of the house.
Bigger problems. All right, so as we said, must refuse. And again, page 57 and 58 is the Attorney General Memorandum, which explains all these fines, these rules, regulations, which you must present at every single listing. Now, state regulations on rentals. It says source of income and children in family. While these two categories are not listed as protected classes in New Jersey's law against discrimination, state statutes prohibit refusing rent because of the would-be tenant's lawful source of income. This provision, covered only by state and not by federal law, forbids discrimination based on income derived from welfare or other subsidies such as Section 8 housing. Have you ever seen ads that say no Section 8?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, 100% illegal. Unless it comes with a little warning sign, the asterisk, that says conditions apply. So if your property was already rejected by Section 8, then your advertisement is correct. If you went there and said, hey, I do not want to participate ever in a Section 8 program, then your ad is now accurate. Unless this happened, one of these two, can you advertise no Section 8?
Can you explain section a little better?
Section 8 is just a government program to
It helps
help
you pay
people that don't have enough income to pay for rent. So instead of it being on the streets or shelters or anything,
It has to be under a certain qualification of to be approved.
yes,
They check.
absolutely. It's all based on income. Yep.
Why do they MLS flag you when you put it is accepted?
They flag you if it says Section 8 is accepted.
Like I got a message like, you have words in your MLS listing. I'm like, really?
Never encountered that issue.
Yeah. And it's,
Whenever you do a screenshot, send it to me, let me see.
yeah, because I was like, that's
You
weird.
sure it's the Section 8 section or it's everything else that you're writing?
No, it says.
Because I know how you advertise your stuff. All right.
You probably didn't do so. Like, she's my student. Let me see if she learned anything.
This,
Sometimes I do.
this right here applies to section of source of income, treatment, and family.
Welfare or Section 8, because there's other programs under that are not Section 8. Like temporary rentals, for instance, totally separate voucher, so the TRA. Now next, it says state statutes also prohibit refusal to rent to families with children under 18 years of age. Okay? Hold on to that. Other provisions. The following miscellaneous provisions govern rentals in New Jersey. A landlord cannot refuse to rent a one-bedroom apartment to two members of the same sex if the same apartment will be available to members of the opposite sex who are equally qualified. It is illegal to subject a tenant to sexual harassment. What I usually say is very simple. You shouldn't really concern yourself with what people do behind closed doors. As long as they pay the rent, that's what you should be concerned with.
No problem.
Right? If they don't pay the rent,
As long as they're not open
That's a
place
problem.
to a prostitution place, that's it.
wow. So yeah.
Wow, we went like,
That was a good one.
Yeah, true.
So we're talking about, okay. So a lease may not provide that it will become null and void
I know.
on the birth of a
I have
child.
no filter sometimes.
I've noticed. So my classes become, like every other class, it becomes even more difficult
I know women is special.
with you and Miss Cocaine over there. I mean, Morning Cocaine. Difficult.
The other day,
With Sue,
today I just hashtag you on Facebook about having a funny teacher.
you tagged me on being a funny teacher.
Yeah.
That's why I'm
And it was
getting
in
requests.
Portuguese.
That's why I'm getting requests.
Oh, did she just do that in class? Did she just say she was on Facebook in class?
No,
I said this morning.
This morning.
No, she's not you. A lease may not provide that it will become null and void on the birth of a child. What does that mean? So I rent an apartment to you guys, right? It's a one-bedroom apartment. There's two of you, and all of a sudden one of you decides to get pregnant. And we go like, hey, you're about to have a baby. Congratulations, get out. I cannot do that, okay? But I'm going to show you in a little bit how to legally do that. So the lease cannot specifically state it like that, right? But there's a way to actually kick somebody out just because they're about to have a baby, legally. And when I say kick out, is give them an option to move on, okay? Make it always sound better. A facility that does not admit pets must permit a guide or service dog. You guys already know this, right?
So the dog owner.
You cannot. You can say no pets, but if it's a
service dog.
guide dog or a service dog, so military or emotional support or blind or, I mean, so many options now.
Yeah,
Once you get the
depression.
card online,
Even the person out there,
Yeah.
they use the dogs for.
Don't they have service cats too?
Emotional snake.
what'd you say? What'd you just say?
Nothing.
I just heard Wednesday, Thursday, Friday right there, if you know what I mean. Anyway, but parrots actually as well, because they're an animal that talks back. Some people actually, it's the only company they have. They get home and the parrot already starts talking, and that's the support. You?
Parents, you said?
Parrot.
Parrot?
I thought they said parents, sorry.
No, parrot, no.
By the time I get home, they're all sleeping, so I don't know.
Papagayo.
Yeah. As long as they speak. Next. A person with AIDS is considered a person with a disability under New Jersey laws and is entitled to protection against discrimination in housing.
Ooh, I like that.
So you guys remember when I said that if you decide to have a baby, one of you decides to have a baby, right? That I'm allowed to kick you out, but I cannot put it on the lease like that? Great. So when I gave you that example, I said that I rented to you a one-bedroom apartment. Now there's a baby. According to health regulations, safety and health regulations, there can be two people in that room. Now there's a third. So what the law says is up to the 6th month of age of this baby, they can stay in the room with you. From 6 months and on, they have to have their own independent room. If you're a single parent, I think it's up to 5 or 6 years. I think it's 5 years. They can stay with you in the room. After that, their own. You guys got it? So I can definitely limit you or kick you out because of the amount of people that can be inside a particular room. So it's occupancy requirements. And that's regulated by your municipality and by state. Okay? And depending on certain situations, even by federal. For instance, having a boy and a girl, even though they're siblings, which back in the day used to be very normal, nowadays, siblings cannot be in the same room after a certain age. Okay? Like,
Can you read again all this? Figure eight.
it's been half an hour, man.
He just woke up.
Which part?
This part.
About the children?
Yeah.
What I was saying is that when you have a baby, so a few years ago, I was in this apartment community, right? And I'm lazy, don't want to take the snow out, so I would go there and let somebody else do it. So that's what I did. And as soon as the wife got pregnant, we received a letter. Congratulations! By the way, according to health and safety regulations, you have up to 6 months to get out. And I could feel that pressure to get out
It's a
on the
couple,
letter.
right? Couple?
There's 2 people, so the
Yeah.
parents
Yeah.
in the room and the baby. It's just 1 bedroom. Okay? Up to the 6 months of age of that baby can stay in the room. Beyond 6 months, they have to leave. Okay? If you're a single parent, the regulations extend a little bit more. That's not for state exam, so you don't have to write it down. It's something you can research later if you want. But yes, each municipality and the state have their own rules and regulations regarding this. Did you get it? Okay, don't make me repeat again, because I'm gonna just replay. Rewind and replay. Next. And it is, of course, always proper to accept or reject prospective tenants on the basis of their ability to pay the rent. So that's income, or their likelihood of doing so, so credit rating. Okay, if your credit scoring is not to my liking, right, and there's no limit on this, I could say I want a 700 score. If you don't have a 700 score, you're not renting. I can say your income has to be 2.5 times or 3 times the rental. You got it? Which at this point, if you guys are smart realtors, if somebody's very close to these qualifications, then most likely they can also buy a house. So keep those leads.
Especially the deposit from the rental. But anyway.
Same.
Now,
Pleasure.
with that being said, do the regular, whatever stipulation you put, have to apply across the board? If you come to me with a 680 and 2.5 times the rent, can the next tenant come and have a 660, making only 2 times the rent, and I accept them? Would that be still considered discrimination?
Now you have to figure out what are the other conditions for it. But how are you going to know the person's credit score?
No, I'm saying, as a landlord, right?
But how is it discrimination? As a potential tenant, I need to know what was that person's credit score. I just have to feel that it was not based on me, it was based on other factors.
Right, but you know how some people are, they send their friend. But anyway, I'm just saying.
That's what I'm saying, but you have to have.
The stipulation has to be the same to everybody,
Mhm.
if you have stipulations. Yes, no?
It's supposed to be. But again, if I don't feel comfortable, how can I say this? Let's say your rental income, I mean your actual income is not a solid income. You make more money,
Mhm.
but it's basically overtime or tips.
Okay.
It's not solid. Can I say that that's not your real income? Like, you've been doing this, so you know. Sometimes people get approved for mortgages based on their overtime, and then there's that quarter that they cannot prove their overtime.
Correct.
So do we close? No. If you cannot verify the income, we don't close. For rentals, it's the same thing. You guys got it? Yes?
Yeah.
Great. So that's page 57 and page 58. And let's go to page 59. Multiple dwelling reporting. Multiple dwelling reporting. It says here, owners of developments containing 25 or more apartments must file an annual report with the State Division of Civil Rights. The report covers racial composition of the tenants and methods of advertising and handling inquiries. So it's very simple. If my building is in a predominantly Hispanic community, then most likely the people that live in this building are of Hispanic origin. Does that make sense? What they want to know, the Division of Civil Rights, what they want to know is that your advertisement, landlords, was not specific to the community. It was open and broad to anybody that would like to live in that particular apartment building. Does that make sense? Yes? Good evening, how are you guys? Yes? Thank you.
This is only necessary when you actually start selling, right?
Say it again?
When you actually start selling houses, is it really necessary on the law before that?
You need to know all this. You should start knowing now. Because this is not, doesn't say realtors. Look what it says. It doesn't say the realtors, it says owners.
Okay.
So is this necessary?
Yes.
Maybe. All right. What do we got here? Zoning discrimination. So we have Mount Laurel 1 and Mount Laurel 2. In 1971, a lawsuit that came to be known as Mount Laurel 1 was filed by the NAACP against the town of Mount Laurel, New Jersey. And the lawsuit was based on illegal discrimination against low-income and moderate-income persons through the use of, please highlight, underline, put stars, exclusionary zoning.
What does that mean?
Explain in a second. So the court stated that all developing communities had to zone for their fair share of the regional needs for low-income and moderate-income families. So, in 1975, and Travis, I know you feel like you're left out. I still did not address it. I know it's coming up. I'm building momentum towards it. Okay. All right. So in 1975, the court ruled that the poor, please underline or circle poor, may not be excluded from residential areas. So every time you see exclusionary zoning, that's what Mount Laurel is trying to do. You're poor, get out of my town. Or that's your corner. You guys understand? It's not much different than what really happens, right?
Exactly what I'm about to say.
No, it's not much different than what really happens. But remember, look right here, Travis. This is 1975. It's not that long ago. For some of you that are younger than this, then yeah, it feels like eternity, right? Especially when I hear them going a song that's like 5 years old. That's so old. I'm like, damn. Right? She's not here.
It's I'm trying to remember.
That's
the
a
name.
really old song. I've heard
No.
sometimes.
It's,
Next.
what's the name?
I don't know. Oh, the medley of
But
whatever.
yeah, Medley. Here we go.
So that town went against their own town?
No, NAACP, which is like a coalition for civil rights, right? So people get together for civil rights, a nonprofit. NAACP.
Okay.
They sued Mount Laurel because of what Mount Laurel was doing.
Oh, okay.
If you ever get into immigration problems, discrimination problems, or anything like that, try to look for a local NAACP.
Yeah, just.
No? I'm not saying you're gonna have immigration problems, but it happens. Some people,
They use
friends,
that.
you know. This is a great advice. They will help you.
For the term poor, were they going by, a
Low.
certain,
Low, moderate income and certain guidelines, yes. So every county issues their guidelines for income. Okay, there's a state guidelines and there's county guidelines based on the type of properties that we have. So if you go to South Jersey, some houses there are worth $25,000,
Mhm.
right? So if you want to live 2.5 hours away, it's going to be very
Yeah,
cheap,
Make it 3.
right?
Yeah, 3 hours.
What, to go to South Jersey? You drive
No,
very slow.
When you live close to exit 2, yeah.
You drive very slow. But anyway, to pay $25,000 for a house, right? Why not? Just saying. I have one for sale if you guys want.